Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Doomed Productions podcast, the podcast hosted by us, Doomed Productions. I'm Ethan.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Zach.
And this is just kind of a space where we like to hang out, decompress, chat about various topics, and in the second part of this episode, we'll also share another story from our Doomed Productions segment where we share stories about film productions that had some problems. But we'll get to that in a little bit. First of all, Zach, how are you surviving in Canada?
The weather has been quite nice, but it's very gradually starting to cool off. So it's going to start getting to that Canadian winter type vibe very soon. I am currently, for the information on film, I am taking an editing course, which I am finding quite beneficial. So.
Oh, wait, hold up. What did you learn this week? Tell us. Have you talked about like Man with a Camera and like Vertov versus Eisenstein and all that?
We've talked about Eisenstein. We've talked about a ton of different figures in the like history. We've talked about like different forms of experimental filmmaking and stuff like that, and kind of like how that was like the birth of like modern editing and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes, here's what we talked about. Oh yeah, so we're going over motion graphics and stuff like that, and working on keyframing. So that's going to be the next couple of weeks. So I've got.
What are you guys editing in?
The school primarily supports Premiere Pro, but I'm more familiar with Final Cut. So it depends on how much time I have.
In film school, it was the same thing. I had Final Cut at home, and then Premiere was at the school, so I had free access to the Adobe suite and everything. But more often than not, I was like, I didn't want to take a bus 30 minutes to go downtown to edit when I could just lay in bed and edit on Final Cut. So I just got really good at Final Cut in film school. I mean, I learned the other stuff too. I'm pretty decent in the other softwares. But any good editor can just hop to any software, I believe. Basics never change.
Or just make good result regardless of the software that they use.
Exactly.
Kind of like we were talking with a buddy last week about editing software preference, and the example that we were kind of kept falling back on was Parasite was edited on Final Cut 7 on a very outdated Mac.
A discontinued software on a not updated Mac.
And it's Parasite. It did great. So doesn't really matter what you edit on all that much.
Yeah. I'm sure there's someone out there who's making a epic VHS movie. Doing in-camera edits, or like a Super 8 movie too. I'm sure there's someone out doing a Super 8, like just cutting within the camera.
Yeah. No keyframes there.
Yeah. But anyways, so
tune in next time for hearing what Zach is learning about at film school.
I know.
We'll leak his whole course.
We'll leak you his film school, and then you don't have to go to film school. You just come to our channel.
Yeah.
But speaking of, I mean, I think part of this revamp is we wanted to. There's stuff we like doing on the channel. There's stuff we don't like. There's stuff that you guys like, and then there's stuff that you guys don't like. And every time we revamp, we try to focus it on what do we like. And something we like doing is we like talking about all things movies, and we like talking about doomed productions. Not like us, but like kind of like Ethan said, like productions that went wrong for one reason or another. So for our first segment today, I have a little. This is an idea for a video that I wanted to make, but it was, as I kind of told these guys, it was so nuanced and specific. It was very hard to distill into a easily digestible 10 to 15 minute video, because I kept writing it and I would film something and then I'd be like, it's no good, and then I'd erase it. And I did that like 5 times. I even tried one last crack at it today to like try to make a video on this topic, but I just couldn't figure it out, because I think it's hard for me to distill into singular things. So I wanted to bring it up on a podcast where we could talk about it more. But and that is the producer's mindset. We've talked about this on our channel before, haven't we? Or no?
Not specifically the producer's mindset. No.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe so anyways. Maybe we have.
Okay. Let's take these kids to film school.
The worst part of film school, the part that makes you have to be hypercritical of everything you make and every decision that you put into your script and why it's probably the wrong decision.
Yes. I think another way to say the producer's mindset is just being either realistic, logistical. I guess one of those two should, fit. But when we say producer's mindset, that means we are referring to you're thinking in a way, you're thinking about the logistics of your movie. And when you're a low budget filmmaker, you have to do this all the time because you don't have a producer who can, that's their job to just think about logistics. You have to be the creative and the logistic and business side of things. And so my kind of video, because we're all fresh off of Little Black Submarines. We all have a very good idea about our limits and what is logistical, what's a film that we can make, and so on and so forth. In fact, we even had a long conversation about that before we came on. We were talking about one of my next projects, and I was like, fellas, I don't think this is logistical. I don't think this is realistic. Because there's never a better time to be in the producer's mindset than right after a film. But, I guess I'm going to pass it off to you before I go on to my more spiel. When it comes to thinking like a producer, what are some good things to keep in mind in terms of assessing your script or assessing a task that you need to do and how filmable or doable it is?
I think the biggest thing really is just, and I think we'll get into this more, so I'm not going to tap on this too much here, but it really is like just balancing your resources, and having a good grasp on what you either already have access to or what you can easily get access to, and not to stretch any of those things too far, or stretch multiple of those things too far. It's kind of just like taking your script into account, breaking down every piece of it and hoping and just looking for all those little details and just trying to make sure you're able to actually execute on those. It's just being really critical, not in the sense of like being a critical writer or like being critical of the narrative, but then just critical of like, all right, what are the real world steps to making this happen? You have to abandon a lot of creativity, it feels like, and or abandon what it feels like are your writer's morals sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Zach, you've had trouble on productions before.
Yes.
What you're not in the thick of it, but you're kind of like in it to an extent. So what's your, and when it comes to like the producer's mindset, what comes to your mind? What is like a key thing you have to keep in mind or think about, or a question you got to ask yourself when it comes to, is my movie filmable? Is it doable?
It means crossing every I and dotting every T prior to starting filming, and even prior to writing subsequent drafts of your script. It's very much a complicated process, and kind of going off of what Ethan said, you kind of have to abandon a certain aspect of the creative part because it's almost like you have to turn it off entirely, because it is like preemptively killing your darlings, especially for us where we are as currently funding our own projects like ourselves. So that means that we are very limited in the resources that we have access to or can get ourselves to have access to. So that ends up being a question of, okay, what do we currently have access to without money? What would we have access to with the amount of money that we do have, what sort of time constraints do we have on ourselves and on our actors or in anybody else involved in the process, and just constantly having that on your mind for each step of the process, whether it's pre-production, post-production, while you're filming on set, et cetera, et cetera, so that you can, I guess, minimize unnecessary stress. I would say it, in a sense, having it on your mind constantly can cause stress, but it can also limit, if you plan ahead, any unnecessary stress that you would have otherwise if you didn't, cover all your bases well in advance.
So this is where I have my weird theory. This is like a vague theory formula. I don't know what you call it. This is what my video was gonna be. Kind of my theory with the producer's mindset, and I guess calculating. Let's say you have a movie idea, and you want to know. They say to think about your your logistics and everything, but what does that mean? How do I know if my movie's filmable? What are questions I need to ask myself? My kind of theory on all this, and please stop me if I lose you at any point. You two, not the listeners. They can't they can't interact.
They just pause the video and leave.
Yeah. Exactly. My theory, now I'm developing this, so I don't know. Oh, my camera ran out of. Oh, hold on. I need to focus. Sorry. My theory is that movies, there's 5 elements that go into making a movie. This is, according to this theory, I know this isn't not actually what it is, but there's props, that's 1. There's costumes and makeup, which is 2. That's, number 2. There's locations, there's VFX, and there's characters. So, obviously you need a crew, obviously you need a schedule, obviously there's other things to take into consideration, but my kind of like loose theory about at least how I judge stuff, and if we can film it, is there's those 5 categories: props, makeup / costumes, locations, VFX, and characters. And those are the 5 key elements that you're going to need to make your movie. And my kind of idea is that when you make a movie, you can go all out on one of those elements. You can kind of go halfway on 2 of those elements. And then the last 2, you have to go very minimal or none at all. And that sounds very vague, and I hope that makes sense, but that's my kind of working theory. So, and this is where it gets even more weird, because this doesn't quite translate as well, but my idea, and maybe you guys can help me come up with a better analogy for this, but I've told you guys this already, but like, my theory is that when you make a movie, you start with 5 spoons. Now, these spoons aren't literal spoons. They represent the amount of resources that, and energy too, an energy that it's going to take to make an element of your movie the best that it can be. So like, that could be money. That could be, like the people that you can get in contact with, like your contacts. That can be just the energy that it takes to go and find whatever that thing happens. So if it's props, it's like, okay, do I have money to get these props? Do I have the materials to make the props? Do I know someone who can make those props? Because if you don't, then you're going to have to do it yourself. And so that would be like a spoon for props. Like that's kind of what a spoon represents, is the amount of energy / resources that you're going to put towards that element. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So my theory, and obviously these spoons would mean different things for different elements. So that's what it would mean for props. But for VFX, that is like, again, do I have the money to buy anything I need to? Do I have the skills that to be able to do this? Do I have the ability to learn if I don't know how to do it? Do I know anybody who does it? So that all takes time and energy and sometimes money and resources to pull off. So, but my theory is that when you make a movie, you have 5 spoons, right? And kind of like what you were saying, Ethan, your job is to balance those spoons equally distributed across all the elements. Now, you can have 1 spoon in each category. You can have 1 spoon in props, one in makeup and costumes, one in locations, one in VFX, one in characters. But that means you're going to have like a 2 character movie. You're going to have 1 location. It's going to be an awesome location, but you're going to have 1 location. You're going to have maybe 1 VFX or special effects. You're not going to have any costume changes, but you're going to go and buy a singular costume for your characters. And you're going to have maybe 1 key prop, right? That's what 1 spoon gets you in each category. So my theory is that if you want, let's say, guys, what should we put in our movie? What do we want to go? What do we want to really highlight?
Dude, there's going to be a really cool explosion in our movie.
Okay. We're going to have an awesome explosion in our movie. Okay. So that means we got to take a spoon away from one of those elements because an explosion, that's kind of a big deal. We got to, I know this is hypothetical me. I actually know how we could do an explosion, but like, let's say we're beginners. Gee, I don't know how to do an explosion. That's going to take a lot of time and energy. That's going to take 2 spoons to figure out. What do we take away from? Zach, what are we taking away a spoon from? We got props, makeup and costumes, locations, VFX, and characters. We got to take a spoon away from one of them that's not VFX.
I'm going to say, if it's going into VFX and special effects, I'm going to expect that to take a significant amount of time. I'm going to say take away from locations.
Okay. We're not going to go out and search for any locations in our movie then. That means we're going to just use our backyard. We're going to use our house. Our location, we can't go out and find something new because that's going to take too many spoons away from us. So now we have a movie with 2 spoons in VFX. So we're going we're going harder on the VFX or the special effects. But we can still have a new costume, we can still have a cool prop, and we can still have a character too. It's like a small movie. All right, but what's something else we should put in the movie? Is there anything else that we need? Not including locations. We already taken that off.
So say you're filming at your house and in your backyard. We've got an explosion. I'm thinking you're probably going to need to go into makeup and costuming, particularly for the after effects of that explosion.
Let's take away from... So this movie has no props. It's just whatever's lying around the house. Where we can't even like... And when I say props, I mean like a key element that like you have to go out of your way to buy, really. Because you can use it... Obviously, you can use a pencil. You can use... Everybody has like a couple of little trinkets like that you can put in lying around the house. But we're not buying any props. It's just what we have. That's kind of how we approach our projects. And so we were kind of going off of the singular example of this one film, and how you can switch around spoons to try to, or metaphorical spoons to try to balance out what you can and can't achieve. Because here's what you can't do. Like I said, you have 5 spoons before you start making a movie. That represents your time and energy and your resources, right? You cannot give 5 spoons to props and 5 spoons to makeup and 5 spoons to locations, 5 spoons to VFX, to characters, all this stuff. It's just impossible. You will go crazy.
Because you just don't have that many spoons.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm not even talking about a low budget standpoint. I'm talking about like... Now again, this is why this kind of video is so hard to make, because what a spoon represents is different for us versus those who are listening at home. It is different for, those listening at home to Hollywood people, right? And that's why I never quite made the video, because this is a very loose idea, but I'm hoping making sense, where I was saying before you go to make a movie, you have a set amount of energy and resources and time that you have to get something done. And at our level anyways, and even big budget levels, you have to be able to balance it. Now, obviously there's more of a balancing act in Hollywood because they have all the resources. They have so much more resources. They can get a lot more done. But at lower budget, even indie level, I still think that it's always best to go all out on like one thing, right? And then kind of go halfway on the other two, and then on the last two just go very minimal. And obviously, you can create movies this way where you write them from the ground up of just like, okay, I'm going to make a movie with lots of VFX and not a lot of characters, and you can create a movie that way. The better way I'd say to do it is just write with what you know you can get access to, kind of like what Zach was saying earlier. But I want to, Ethan, and I want to bring you in on this because I want to look at The Bell Rings,
Yeah.
because we were talking about that. That's a movie that seems huge and massive, right? It's a period piece. It's a horror fantasy. It's you know, just that alone, that idea alone, that sounds expensive. That sounds like it'd take a lot of resources. But in your kind of retrospective opinion, where did you think your five spoons go? You don't
Yeah.
have to use that specific metaphor, but like, how did you balance it out in order to like, you know, get it all done?
I think our spoons went to very specific things within these categories because we had kind of all of these, obviously all of these things exist in movies in some way. Like you're not gonna have a movie with zero props, but I think this movie was lucky in the sense that we really only had to go hard on and resource wise on like one aspect of each of these categories. So for locations, most of the locations we had access to for free. The only two that kind of hinged on people outside of us were the farm and the church. And luckily we had access to those. We've been given access to those for free. And the only real thing that was like made those tricky was just the time frame that we had to work within. But it really wasn't that hard. And then going for like, let's say cast, we obviously, Jordan and I acted as two of the leads, which was probably the biggest, thing we pulled away from in terms of spoons was casting. We tried to keep it as small as possible. And there are
And
parts
Richard,
of
we'd worked with him for years.
Yeah, the only new person was Bellamy coming on to play the witch, and she did a great job. And she was just as game to work with us and kind of down to let us torture her basically just these hot summer days, filming long days. But she was like, I'd rather shoot a lot of like a couple long days instead of a bunch of short days. So we made that work in our schedule, and it was great. So that was probably another, spoon there with just getting Bellamy and working around her schedule and Richard's schedule. Props and like all that, most of it was already owned. The only real prop we had to buy was like the bell obviously was really important, and a couple of small, glasses, plates, things like that, set dressing basically. But luckily my family home, while it's in a neighborhood and it's not farmland anymore, it used to be, and there's still some like old relics that we have on the property that kind of resemble what the land used to be used for. So having access to that stuff made it just a little bit easier to make the place more like believable. Like we had like a cast iron stove, some like old vintage furniture, one of which my neighbors was getting rid of, and I walked down the street and took it off their driveway and brought it into my backyard, like some of the chairs, stuff like that. What's nice also is everything in that movie is based around people who are really poor. So getting away with crappy things was easier to do in this movie. And probably anything else that didn't fit, or when spoons ran out, the benefit of how I wrote this movie was it's like historical adjacent. So I was not trying to be historically accurate to the degree that probably some, scholars would like, but I was just trying to, get across an aesthetic and a vibe without worrying about it being true period piece accurate. There's a million things in this movie that probably are not accurate, and I was just down to lean into that. Probably the most being even just Bellamy's tattoos. She was completely tatted up all around her arms, and it was like, we're not going to try and cover this. Like, we're just going to leave it in. It's just me part of the character. And it's great. Honestly, I love it. But stuff like that, you just like, got to just roll with it. And in terms of VFX, the only real VFX were like 2 green screen shots and a JPEG of a car that I just plopped into a scene.
Have you revealed that yet on the channel?
No, the car is a
Okay.
JPEG.
Okay, go everybody pause this right now and go pull up the bell rings.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna pull up the timestamp right here.
Oh, geez.
Let's
Yeah.
see.
Oh boy.
The bell rings, the car in that is a JPEG image file.
Well, okay, it's a PNG technically, I guess.
PNG,
I
sorry.
downloaded a JPEG, brought into Photoshop, cut out the windows, cut out the shape of the car, and then just exported it as a transparency, and then just scaled it, put it behind some grass, and I don't think I put it behind grass. I think I just cut like a clean line across it and just like, eyeballed it. And I knew the shot was ready when we were on like a call with some friends of ours, and I was showing them stills from the movie, and I tossed that one in of the car, and they're like, oh my gosh, how much did the rental cost? And I was like, all right, the shot's done. I'm not going to tweak it anymore.
51 minutes 59 seconds.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
bell rings. Look at that.
About halfway through, yeah.
Look at that. That
You'd
is
never know.
That is
It
a
works
PNG.
out so nice.
You'd never know.
Now you like and what makes it work is like it's in the distance. 2, it's in black and white. That's another thing.
Black and white helps huge.
And
It's a still shot.
it's a still shot, and you have stuff in the foreground, which, like you said, the grass is kind of blocking it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if you, yeah, which did you know that going into the bell rings, like you were gonna do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew. I knew that there was no other way I was going to pull it off. Did I think it would look as good as it did? I wasn't entirely sure.
Yeah.
But it looks good. Can't knock
Looks great. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to like spoons and whatnot. Which again, I'm not sure if I've cracked the formula of like figured out a good formula to how to calculate all that. But like that's one of those things where, we couldn't afford to rent a car. We didn't know anybody who had a car like that. So it's like, well, I really want a car in the movie. This character drives a car. And you're like, well, I'll just get a PNG image and drop it in. And that goes into VFX. And it's like, okay, cool. And it worked out. Yeah, no, I think it works awesome. And I think the Bell Rings is such a great example of, again, the movie feels so big in scope, but it's really not, like, on a production level. It's a pretty small movie.
You just need actors that are willing to stand in a field for a long time. I mean, that's the hardest. I mean, like, I think our biggest asset at Doomed that lets us get away with what we do is the fact that, like, we've been doing this long enough that we know what we can do. And I think that's been changing a little bit for us. And Jordan, I know you can talk to this a lot, and Zach, you too. We're trying to push the envelope more. And that's kind of been the thing that's led to the most like bumpy roads for us on production, and then also coming out of production into post. Because when you push the envelope on how you spend your spoons and where you spend them, that's where you start to I don't know, see the cracks, I guess, in the movie. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just like you see the limits of where you can push things. And I think we all kind of like the Bell Ring seems to have balanced that stuff well at the level that we were making things at 2 years ago. But I think we're trying to crack through a ceiling here into a next phase of navigating the spoons, so to speak.
We can find
that makes
another
sense.
analogy. No, that does. But it's like we don't have to stick with spoons. It's just...
Well, yeah. It's like we're in the Iliad here. We're like traveling through like different islands, and there's different monsters that are just pitfalls in production.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
And
I
also
don't know.
other factors which play into filmability, but not necessarily. Well, but it's kind of difficult. But like, if there's action in your movie, if there are different setups in your movie, how much dialogue there is. Scheduling, that's a huge thing. Those are all other things that come into effect. But I think when it comes to planning your movie from like you've just written your awesome script, you go through it, you're gonna kind of like mark it up and say, okay, I'm gonna need this many locations, this much VFX, this much yada yada yada. Going through it and figuring out, okay, how much energy is this going to take overall? Do I have the ability to do all that? And really look at yourself honestly, because you got to know your own limits, kind of like you said. But it's also, if you find your limits and push those limits, that's when you learn a whole lot of stuff too. I mean, with Little Black Submarines, I mean, that's a movie where that was like 5 spoons in every category. That movie should not have gotten done, like been made. And I've said that before. Like there are so many different areas and ways that, frankly, I felt not unprepared, but just like, we knew we were going to push ourselves, but I didn't realize the extent that we were going to. And like I didn't think about like, and that's kind of what really solidified this idea of like going all out on one thing, and then going kind of halfway another 2, and then minimizing the last one. Like when we were writing the script, it was like, let's just go all out on everything. Like that was the goal from the beginning, which I'm like, that's probably not a great idea. I mean, I don't regret it, but it's just a fact. Like, because we went all out on everything, I think it doesn't live up to the vision in my head, but it is a vision. It's a clear, like, it's a cohesive piece, but it's just, there were compromises that we had to make and problems that we ran into because when you go all out on something, it drains your time, energy, and mental health, and to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But Zach, what's with Coalescence, in terms of spoons, I mean, do you, because you're kind of in a similar place to me where we kind of pushed ourselves to like the max. I feel like, I could be wrong, but like, what's your experience with like your spoons and all that? Going back to the metaphor.
This is
for Coalescence.
Yeah, Coalescence is probably the most valuable project I have done, may ever do, just because of how much I learned the hard way with that project. In regards to spoons, I tried to multiply the amount of spoons I had and put them wherever the hell I wanted to. And it ended up, at least as of currently, the movie is 2/3 shot. There are like maybe 3 or 4 scenes edited. None of the VFX I even have the slightest clue of how are going to be done. It's a situation where I learned the value of what we are calling this spoon theory.
We gotta
That's actually
coin
a
this.
good name.
We gotta coin this now.
Okay, copyright Doom Productions, Spoon Theory. We're still developing it, but like, I don't want to see that name floating around YouTube.
It's ours.
But yeah, according to spoon theory, or rather, I learned spoon theory from Coalescence. That sounds strange.
Yes.
But basically, it was one of those things where it's like, I hate that I had to learn it that way, but I'm so much more aware of those elements now because I went into that in such a rookie fashion, I think, that in a way, it was good that I learned the hard way, because now I know what it looks like to overcommit on everything and not necessarily be able to get everything that you wanted out of the project. Again, that still remains to be seen because the project isn't finished, but and we'll see what happens. But it's very much, that was kind of, I like to view that as my filmmaking, like, I don't know,
Joker origin
my
story.
Self-hazing. No,
It's a
kind of my self-hazing into filmmaking, of like, here, this has, the production of this film has been very difficult for me, but I've learned so much because of the difficulty, and I'm very thankful for those lessons that I've learned. But like, it was too ambitious for me to do at the time because I did not know how to fully organize it in a manner that would be achievable. It is probably our largest cast just because of the amount of extras that were involved in the filming of it.
Dude, your cast
There are
was
tons
huge.
of locations.
I
The
don't
cast
know
was huge.
how
Oh,
you
yeah.
wrangled that many people.
Yeah.
Connections, and just reaching out via text. It helps when you're volunteering at in a drama club at your old high school. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the many things that did go well on that project, I am very thankful for, and are big reasons why I want to finish the project, as opposed to just being like, oh, I overcommitted, it's not going to work out the way I wanted it to, and just drop it. But I do want to make it work in some semblance of fashion. But getting back to the spoons, I wanted to make everything work to get across this vision that was not necessarily achievable for me at the time. And oftentimes that sucks to be like, man, I have this great idea that I'd love to make into a movie. And the worst thing that you can hear, at least in your pinnacle of like creative juices, is, I don't know if you can make this. And that sucks. Or I don't know if this version of the story can be told. That also sucks, but they are necessary things. Because it may mean this doesn't look exactly the way you wanted, but you do still get to tell a version of this story. Or it means, hey, maybe you wait a few years on this until you are more capable or have more experience under your belt to pull off certain things. It also may mean try it anyways, knowing full well that it may not necessarily go the way you want it to, but you will learn a lot from it. There are so many filmmakers out there whose early movies do not reflect their current skill level. I think that goes for every single filmmaker. And it is very much a constant learning process, and something that, at least for myself as a creator, I have to constantly remind myself to not beat myself up about, because we are constantly learning and improving as we go along. So taking that knowledge going forward, and applying it to future projects or a later part in the process of a current project, or whatever the case may be, I think is very, very valuable.
And that's what I think with when it comes to biting off more than you can chew. Like, yeah, when you want to show off and be like, yeah, this is the best I can do, you shouldn't bite off more than you can chew or overestimate yourself. But you learn the most from those experiences, and you shouldn't regret those experiences. Because I think that's a canon event with all filmmakers, is like, we all have a project that we were overly ambitious. It took us way too long to finish the project, or maybe the project never got finished, and you learned a lot on it because that was the first time you ever made a movie. Usually for you, like, that was like your second or third movie you made.
I think that was my fourth movie that I directed, because we did the 3 Wild Boys movies, and the third one was made that same summer as Coalescence was.
You know, maybe the reason your movie didn't get finished because we made Wild Boys 3 at the same time. That might have been on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's it's a learning process, and you should never
Mm-hmm.
the royal you. Like if you're a filmmaker, you shouldn't be like, oh geez, I failed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm no good. No, you got to be like, no, I just learned what I can and cannot do. I learned about the camera. I learned about managing crew members. I learned about this, that. Like it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And that's a growth mindset. You can't be
Yeah.
stuck in your ways, because you can always improve. You can always get better, and that's the way you push through all that kind of filmmaking stuff in general. Um, Even when
Yeah.
spend tens of thousands of spoons on the different elements of your movie and all that.
Yeah.
Can't cheat the spoons.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just thinking about it, that is like my first like traditionally shot movie,
Mm-hmm.
because the three Wild Boys movies are completely different beasts
Mm-hmm.
than like some of the other projects that we do, just because we just get to pick up a camera and goof around.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
And I love that so much. But at the same time, it is kind of funny to be like on your fourth movie that you've directed and be like, oh, now I'm starting to run into problems, you know?
Yeah. Well, again, the Wild Boys movies, that's like no spoons on anything. It is
Right.
so easy. Like I think we all.
That is the perfect example
Yeah.
of assessing your spoons before even writing the story.
Yeah.
Because we've told this story many times, but for those who haven't heard it, it was basically just like, oh, we'd like to make a movie this summer. I'd like to direct a movie. What does this look like? What do we have access to? Oh, Ethan, we've got a Bigfoot costume from somebody at our church. What can we do with that? And then we just brainstormed from there. And it was just all just stuff that we had access to. The only costs really were maybe one or two costume pieces, gas, and then
The cold ones.
freaking like 4 boxes of cold ones.
So many seltzer waters were drank that day. So
Remember
many
the
of them were
first day of
really
that?
hot.
It was burning hot because it was in that heat wave.
Yeah.
When we shot with the cold ones.
It was like
were
it was like carbonated tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
But not cold tea,
it-
hot
yeah.
tea.
Yeah, they were not cold
Yeah.
ones in any sense of the word.
No. No.
But yeah. Wild Boys.
Anyways, I feel like that's a good place to put a pin in this spoon theory conversation. And to like, as of now, as a review, the spoon theory is you have 5 spoons when you start a movie, and you have costumes, makeup, you have props, you have characters, locations, and FX, and you have to distribute your 5 spoons. You can only spend 5 spoons. That's the working theory as of now. If anyone has any improvements, any suggestions, please leave a comment or question, because we're developing this. But we take full copyright of this name, Spoon Theory.
The textbook comes out next year.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you own a steel factory and can make us more spoons, please.
yeah. So, with that, let's move into our next segment in the podcast, which is Doom Productions. This is where we tell the horror stories of filmmaking. Movies tell the stories about the movies that for one reason or another ran into problems. So, Ethan, you brought to us a story today. What'd you bring for us?
You know, I think this is a story that ties in well with this conversation, better than I thought it would. This is a movie that also maybe has, some spoons that they lost track of. This is the story, and to preface as well, we've kind of shortened this segment just a little bit. So this is maybe more of an overview, but this is a look at the making of Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead back in 1981. So, because it's Halloween. Halloween's coming up here, so I figured, perfect time to talk about a great horror movie, a cult classic. So, like I said, The Evil Dead was released in 1981, directed and written by Sam Raimi, and stars Bruce Campbell, Ellen Sandweiss, and Richard DeManicore. I got that name right. I was nervous about that one when I was typing it. As I was researching this movie, I really love it because it's so familiar in a lot of ways to, I feel like, just again, like the canon events of what it's like to be a young filmmaker starting out. I couldn't help but look at this production with very rose tinted lenses, even though it also sounded awful and reminded me a lot of our worst production sets in some ways, and some in not so much. But anyways, I'll dive into it here. So getting a little bit of backstory here. Sam Raimi started off filmmaking like a lot of filmmakers, making movies with his friends on his family's Super 8 camera. And he would play them for his family, friends, classmates. And eventually he started going to film school with a couple of his buddies. And while he was there, they found out that they could rent out their like school auditoriums for like a really, really cheap discount because they were students. So what they would do is they would get the one that has the projector screen, and then they would wheel in their own Super 8 projector, and they would charge people to come in and watch movies that they'd made, like their short films that they were making in high school. And they would also, during this time, they'd also go to the drive-ins all the time. So this is back when the drive-ins were really popular. And they would always be like, well, we could make movies better than the movies we're seeing at the drive-in. They just weren't very impressed. So they did what any rational human would do, and they dropped out of school so that they could just make movies.
Wait, were they in film school or high school?
This was college. This was when they were like learning how to make movies in college, and they just dropped out. Because they're like, we're just going to do this better.
Your next move.
And I love that so much. Anyways, kind of jumping, they made a short film that they kind of shopped around to funders to be like, hey, we want to make a feature film. We want money. Here's what we can do. Here's our experience. And they were able to raise about $90,000 to make The Evil Dead. So, a good chunk of money. Like, and this is 70s money, might I add. So I don't know if this is for inflation. It sounds like this is just how much they made. I'll look up the inflation
right now.
Yeah, it sounds like they made about $90,000. Some people on like documentaries and stuff, the number is a little fudgy, but 90 is about what it sounds like. Anyways, Bruce Campbell, one of Raimi's buddies, would produce the film alongside him, and since he would already be there on set majority of the time anyways, he was also cast as the lead role of the character Ash. And other cast members were found just through local listings in the paper.
The budget,
yeah,
inflation to today. So from 1980 to today that's $348,000.
That's a good budget right there.
Yeah.
For just crowdfunding. Let's be real. They just did crowdfunding.
Yeah.
So as they're trying to get, everything kind of set up for their movie, they send out some location scouts, which really just meant they had some of their friends and cast find locations on their own. And they originally wanted to shoot in Raimi's hometown in Michigan, but they decided to go with this small little town in Tennessee, because they just seemed more enthusiastic and open to the project. And they were able to find a remote cabin that was several miles away from any other buildings and just very, very remote. And during pre-production, they had the 13 crew members that they had stay in the cabin. And this meant, and this made me think
this is sounding very familiar to our production we just made.
It sounds a lot like Little Black Submarines. And they just had people sharing a room, sleeping on the floor.
That was us.
But what was better for us than them, their cabin had no plumbing.
Oh, no.
So I even wrote in my notes, makes Little Black Submarines feel not so bad after all.
Wait. We didn't tell the story. Zach, can we tell the stick story, or should we not? It's your call. Because that is a great story.
I think we did. Did we not?
We brushed over it.
Oh, yes. We need to tell the story.
Okay. We had plumbing, but not for long due to what Zach did.
Yeah. Let's just say it was a small house,
Listen.
and Zach is powerful.
Listen, I have learned some very sketchy plumbing tricks from experience.
So anyways, Zach got a big old stick because that was
No,
the
he
only
had-
way to save the toilet.
He had to do a little bit of churning of the butter, if you know what I mean.
So
So, yes, I fixed the toilet before Nathan, our gracious host and executive producer, woke up in the morning. But, which was honestly a good thing, because if he saw me hauling a stick in and out of the bathroom, it'd be a little concerning.
I like to think you just like grunted
listen,
at him
it
and he got
works.
scared and went back into his room.
Listen, it works. If you've got if you are how shall I put this?
If you need to do some logging,
Blessed like I am. Blessed with an overabundance, let's say. Get a stick from your backyard and just go at it.
Not enough.
Because the plunger isn't going to work. Believe me, I've tried.
Not enough spoons in the world to stop what Zach was producing in that toilet. And not enough to get it out. Anyways,
This is going to be on the internet forever now.
yeah,
so we had plumbing, but Evil Dead did not.
they did not. All right. Anyways, moving on from the bathroom. I didn't realize we'd go such a long tangent down that bit. Production roles, much like us, were shared amongst everyone, people wearing multiple hats. And shooting was done primarily at night from 6:30 p.m. until dawn. And how Sam would let the crew know what they'd be shooting next. He would illustrate stick figures on storyboard paper or sometimes napkins and post them on the fridge of the production house for people to look at. Kind of like a really bad version of what we did.
Yeah,
You had the whiteboard.
we had a whiteboard.
Yeah,
You had my terrible storyboards.
I did. Really, the whiteboard was super helpful. The whiteboard was great.
Yeah.
But what sucked was they started filming in November. And so the weather started to get cold really quick, especially because you're filming at night. And the road, which was just a muddy road that led to the cabin, started to freeze over. And so it was too treacherous to travel by car. So all luggage and equipment would have to be hand carried in by the crew for at minimum like a quarter mile, sometimes further depending.
Okay.
And it was one of the coldest years on record in Tennessee in decades. And ironically, the location they wanted to shoot at in Michigan was having one of its warmest winters on record.
Oh my gosh.
And because of what the actors were having to wear, their costumes often had like blood or there were other like makeups or prosthetics on them. They couldn't easily put them, like get them in and out of jackets, so they couldn't wear warm layers. So what people would have to do is crew that wasn't being used, they would have to huddle around the actors and warm them instead of being able to put on coats. So they'd just be standing out there in whatever you were wearing as your costume, and that was all you had.
Oh my gosh! Wow,
Yeah.
that's
And
miserable.
I don't think the union would be too happy about that
the
today.
union could never know about this.
Yeah.
And by the end of the shoot, the crew was bringing furniture out onto set for them to burn so that they could stay warm at night.
What?
They were just like burning piles of furniture that they would bring from town so they could just stay warm.
They would bring from town. I thought you meant they would like burn it from like they'd bring from the cabin.
No, it seems like they brought it from, although I'm sure that happened too. And the cabin also, I mean, obviously it was not great just by what's in the movie, but the cabin literally was falling apart. And as they were filming it, was so much wear and tear on it that it was just deteriorating. And because of all the blood that they were using on set, the floor was soaked in it. And this is again where people are like staying. And
Oh.
I mean, they had, it sounds like they had another production house as well they were able to eventually use, but they're like, people were in here all night. How they would have to make the floor safe is they would have to cover it in ashes because like it was so sticky. So they're just pouring ash all over the floor.
Wow.
Which I'm sure is great to breathe.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I thought we had it bad in our set.
It kind of reminds me of the house that we used, though, in Little Black Submarines.
With the asbestos in the air, probably.
Yeah, the asbestos house.
Oh, yeah.
There were some lead pipes in there for sure. Guarantee
The walls
you.
were very exposed, or the inside of the walls, I should say.
There were hardly walls to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, well.
You'll know more about that when the movie comes out,
yeah. You'll
folks
see.
at home. All right. So being a horror movie, obviously, there's a lot of monster effects that you got to do. You're putting your spoons there, you know, for sticking with the metaphor. And one of the main effects, obviously, they have in the movie is that when the undead are, you know, come back to life, they have these like bright white eyes. I didn't realize how far contacts technology has come, because ours, like, you know, they're like soft. And you can like fold them and you put them in your eye and it's great. And you have like the solution and everything, you put them in and it's no problem. Apparently the old ones, especially the cheap ones that they're using, are like rigid and they cover the whole like front of your eye. So you have to like pull your eye open and put it in.
Oh no!
Oh,
Their hands are covered in like their blood. So the actors can't do it.
Gosh.
Oh no!
So what Raimi decided was, since Bruce Campbell, he decided he was one of the more responsible people on set. They gave him the job to do it in between, you know, acting scenes. So what he would do, because they didn't have plumbing, he couldn't wash his hands. What he would do is he would go to, there's like a coffee pot on set that had hot water in it, and he would just pour hot water on his hands to clean them. And then
No soap?
No soap, just boiling hot coffee water. And he would wash his hands with that. And it would take like 10 minutes to apply these things. But he would put them into the person's eye. And then they're not transparent. So once they're in, you can't see. So you have to act your scenes blind.
So this is why zombies stumble around.
Yeah, they have no idea where they are. So if you watch, like, there's a documentary you can watch, and it's on YouTube. You can watch them like acting with the zombies, and it's just like a person's, they're just standing there, and they're like, "Where are you? Are you over here? Okay," and they'll act that way, but they have no clue where things are.
Dude.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so one of the actors, Betsy Baker, I mean, she there's this great scene in the documentary that I was watching about Making the Evil Dead, where one of the guys Sam's talking to her, and he's like, "All right, in this scene, we're gonna hit you in the head with this this wooden beam, like a 2x4, but it's not actually wood; it's styrofoam. So we're just gonna hit you in the head a few times with it, and it's gonna be fine." The crew had gone into town to find like a styrofoam beam or something that could make it look like wood, and they ended up coming back with this like massive like 4x4, and it was designed for like being on your ceiling as like decoration to look like you had like exposed wood beams in your house. But it's this big thick thing. It's like technically foam, but it's like that really hard dense foam, it looks like.
Oh yeah.
And they just cut to this clip, and Sam Raimi, I guess, wanted to be the one to do it, where he's just like whacking her in the like face with it, and he ends up like clipping her in the jaw, and she just like goes down.
What?
And I guess
no.
Raimi was like really into like the more people have to suffer for the movie, the better the performance. So he's like, "Oh, she's mad. Great, let's keep it rolling, guys. We got a few more hits we got to get."
Oh my gosh.
And he would just like nonstop harass the actors. Another thing was when Bruce Campbell got like a knee injury from falling down a hill during like a chase, Raimi would just like poke him in the knee with a stick, just like for
What?
fun, just to make him mad. And I think there's a quote here I got. Yeah, Raimi was quoted as saying, "If everyone is in extreme pain and misery, it would translate to good horror."
My goodness.
He's a madman.
I'm not I don't know if I agree with that, but it is a great movie.
Like I said, it's like
I don't agree with the methods.
parts of it I'm like, this is I relate so strongly, and other parts I'm like, what on earth was this man doing to these poor people in the woods?
I know. Oh my gosh.
The lead actors finished shooting. They were contracted to do 8 weeks of filming, and I think by the end it like got closer to like 8 weeks. But they finished their main filming, and then Raimi and Bruce Campbell and a few of their other crew members, they kept filming up in Michigan after production finished at just like other family members' cabins around, or just like in the woods, just wherever they could. And they continued filming for until they hit about 12 weeks total of filming. So another like 3 additional weeks of photography. And they would just come up with scenes that they wanted to shoot. So if there's scenes where Bruce Campbell is like by himself, they probably shot it during this 3-week period where he's just doing whatever.
I relate to that very much of like,
Yeah.
film everything with the actors, we'll get then, but if
Yeah.
it's just me, we'll do later.
Yeah, exactly. So they just kind of did this own little separate like section of principal photography. Guess how much the movie cost? Like the budget. Guess what the budget was? So again, it was $90,000 what they raised. Guess how much the movie actually cost?
I'm gonna say it at least doubled.
So like 180,000.
180,000, yeah.
Okay, Zach, what do you think?
I want to say it was a little less than what they raised.
Oh, you want to say it's cheaper?
Like maybe 88,000. I don't know.
With all those production problems? Remember, this is celluloid film.
That's true.
Right.
Oh, so this might even be
And they
more
got
than
it printed in 35.
Yeah.
So this is by the time the movie's distributed, like all those
Yeah,
costumes.
when the movie's done. Again.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, like
So
for
that- in
everything?
that case,
Yeah,
Okay,
for
hold on.
everything.
I'm gonna say 380,000.
I'm gonna say I'll go 400,000.
Ding, 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 ding. Jordan got it at $400,000.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold up. What? How much is that today?
That's probably I mean, it's got to be close to $1 million.
In 1980?
It's got to be up there. Like, what, 900,000 million?
Inflation.
1 point something. Yeah.
That's like $1 million. There's how many zeros are in a million? 6,
It's
right?
six.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's $1 million and like 500,000.
Damn.
1.5 million.
1.5 million. All right, yeah. So that's what they got. And apparently they had tons of footage that they had shot, like so much. And the film's first cut ran to like 117 minutes. And which, according to Campbell, he called it an impressive achievement that they got it down that short. And then, because they said the first cut ran to 117 minutes, and he thought it was impressive because it was only a 65-minute length screenplay, so like 65 pages, which kind of reminded me of The Bell Rings, because Bell Rings was 63 pages and came out to like an hour and 45 minutes. So a little different.
Yeah.
Anyways, you'd think that a movie going that high over budget would like totally ruin it, and no one a part of that production would ever be allowed to make movies ever again. But they had a large promotional campaign. They did a lot of work to get the movie in front of people. And during its first week in theaters, it played at about 15 theaters total. It grossed about $108,000 in its opening weekend. So kind of not great, but word of mouth spread and it became like a sleeper hit, and it grossed totally to $2,400,000 domestically. So that's just U.S. box office.
Good for them.
And it did really well.
Yeah.
And Sam Raimi is a name that some people have heard of. Maybe.
Yeah, he never made another movie after that, right?
Yeah, he quit.
This is his only. He's a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
Anyways, that's a brief overview of the Doom production, The Evil Dead. Thoughts, questions?
Dude, I
comments?
gotta watch Evil Dead again. I have the Blu-ray over there.
Yeah.
I gotta check it out.
I got the VHS.
Oh, even
I
better.
left my copy at home, but I'll have to find it some other way.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
That sounds nightmarish, but
sounds
also
terrible.
very relatable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the worst part is I'm like, yeah, I can picture all of that. I've been in around that to some degree.
I think the thing that would make me feel the worst is the actors getting hurt.
Oh yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
thing. I'm like, I'll take production problems like us having to deal with cold or heat or anything, but it's like the cutting up feet, Bruce Campbell's leg, and just that would make me feel awful. Oh my goodness.
There was a funny little bit. I didn't include it in my write-up, but one of the guys who was in charge of like doing the makeup for like the zombies, he was like, yeah, I just used whatever I had, and I had acrylic paint, which I now realize is like really toxic to put on human skin. And he just painted people with acrylic paint. It's like everything you're not supposed to do for like safety is what they were doing. But I kind of love that, you know? Like it's fun. It's fun in your youth as a filmmaker when nothing matters.
Yeah.
But once you actually once we're getting to that point now where it's like, guys, I just want to be comfortable.
These guys were in their 20s, right? Because
Yeah.
they dropped out of college.
Yeah, they were in their young 20s.
So all of them. So yeah, I can, it's okay, maybe that's still bad, but it's like there's something about the camaraderie of like we're all going to put ourselves through hell to make this awesome movie. There is something to that as a bonding experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Little Black Submarines was rough. It wasn't Evil Dead rough, but it was still rough, and I feel like infinitely closer to all those people who worked on the movie than I had before. I mean, we had never met Izzy before.
Yeah.
And he's like a brother now. He's like, hey, it's Izzy. Like,
It's Izzy.
We love him.
Yeah.
Him and Riley, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very unique experience to make a movie like that. I'm glad we haven't made a movie like that.
No.
Yeah.
I hope we never do.
There's a part of me that's like, oh man, we could all just go into the woods and we could do the same. I think all filmmakers, there's a romantic part in your brain that like is like, but what if?
It's like a siren call.
The old man in me is like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Wow, that's great.
that's how that movie went. Good times.
That's a good story. Thank you for that research.
Yeah, it's fun. Like I said, I recommend the documentary that's on like YouTube. It's there for free.
What's it called?
I just looked up Evil Dead documentary or behind the
Okay.
scenes, and it's like the first thing that pops up. It's like 53 minutes long.
Oh, nice.
It's a little weird to watch, at least the version that I found, because to avoid YouTube's like detection, they like warp stabilized the whole thing. So watching it is a little trippy sometimes.
Oh, I think I found it. The Treasures from the Cutting Room Floor. Is that what it
I
is?
think that might be it.
Raw takes and footage. This might be it.
No, it's not. It's not. There was a one that was just footage, but
Okay, I'll look for it later.
yeah. If I find it, I'll link it in the description for
Cool.
viewers
Cool.
and
No,
listeners.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for that story. I guess now we can transition into our. Oh, does anyone have any wrap up things they want to talk about Evil Dead real quick? Okay, we're moving on. We updates. What are you watching? What are you working on? What are we working on? We kind of touched about it a little bit, but not terribly.
We're writing.
We're writing.
You're editing, Jordan.
Yep.
I'm editing and I'm shooting next week for another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in the laying low phase, it feels like. Because
Yeah.
what you're shooting is not going to be seen for a while. So it's not like
It's not gonna be seen for a long time. Let's just put it that way.
it's so freaking ominous.
See, I can like be cryptic like that, but if I outright say it, then I jinx it,
Yeah.
and then it
Yeah.
won't happen.
Yeah.
So I'll stay cryptic for now.
No, stay cryptic. It's always, there's one thing we've learned at doing productions, other than spoon theory. It's be cryptic whenever you can. Never
Yeah.
give a straight answer.
Yeah.
Second you do, you're wrong.
No, but yeah, I'm shooting a thing next week, which I'm very excited about. And I prefer this style of filmmaking, honestly.
Me too.
Like, it's very flexible.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
You guys working on anything else? Just writing and prepping for our next.
Well, we're all writing. We've set goals for ourselves writing wise, but in addition, I have 2 other projects that I'm currently outlining. That is as much as I will say. But yeah.
This kind of goes halfway between the two topics of what are you watching and what are you working on. I watched Eraserhead for the first time. Don't tell anybody. This weekend, and I call myself a Lynch fan, but after watching that, I was like, I just want to make something weird. It just sounds like a lot of fun. Just something weird that makes no sense and makes no money as usual, but just something fun.
Anything else you've been watching, Ethan?
Yeah, I watched Hocus Pocus and Hocus Pocus 2. Did a little double feature and watched a whole bunch of Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Trying to get in the Halloween mood this weekend.
I was gonna say I watched Over the Garden the Wall.
Nice.
And
nice.
Ichabod and Mr. Toad this weekend, and it was great because it's very Halloweeny.
I have yet to start on my Halloween movie watch throughs. However, since I'm in Canada, it was Thanksgiving for this particular country this weekend, so I had a long weekend. Had a lot of time to watch some things, so I ended up rewatching a couple episodes of Ahsoka. Since the last time we recorded, I watched No Country for Old Men, finally. I had not seen that movie yet. It was very good. I recommend it to any
It's an awesome movie.
aspiring filmmakers.
Never heard of it, but I'll add it to the list.
Prime example of show don't tell, and kind of the theory of 2+2, and not necessarily giving the answers outright, but letting the audience solve the equation. Absolute masterful work. Very much enjoyed it. I also saw Gran Turismo and Equalizer 3 as well.
Okay. I've not seen a single Equalizer movie. What are your thoughts on the franchise and the newest one?
I have seen the first one a while back, so I don't necessarily remember all the details. It was enjoyable. The most recent one was not particularly impressed with. I think they could do a better job of better camera work, I would say. How they shoot the movies, I think, could be a lot better. And I think that would really amplify some of the performances in the movies, and just give things a little bit more oomph. Whereas it just feels like another just standard rated R action thriller movie, I guess. But yeah, it was enjoyable. I would have done a lot of things differently, but
If you've been listening to us this far, thank you so much. Make sure you give us a like and subscribe and tell your friends about us. because we got some cool stuff coming out pretty soon. You can find us at all the social media stuff. The links are down below in the YouTube description. But yeah, if you are interested in more cool filmmaking conversation, if you want more context about what we're talking about, this movie we keep referencing that we shot over the summer, listen back to our last podcast, that episode. You'll learn a lot more about our summer and how we spent our year and everything. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Hope you're doing well, and we'll see you on the next one.